Right now, some part of you is about to open a new tab. Not because you decided to, not because you thought, I should check my phone. Your hand just moved. And by the time your conscious brain catches up, you're already 3 scrolls deep into something you don't even remember opening. Here's the uncomfortable truth. That wasn't you. Not the you that makes decisions anyway. You'd like to believe there's a little pilot in your head, making calls all day. I'll check my phone now. I'll skip dessert. I'll go for a run. But for a huge chunk of your life, that pilot isn't even in the cockpit. Something else is flying the plane. Your habits aren't yours. They're your brain's. And your brain has been running the show a lot longer than you'd like to admit. Let's start with something strange. You can drive an entire route home, turns, stops, lane changes, and arrive with zero memory of the drive. That's not you being careless. That's your brain running a program without you. Every day, you make somewhere around 35,000 decisions. If your conscious mind, the slow, deliberate, let me think about this part of you, had to handle all of them, you'd still be deciding what socks to put on by lunchtime. So, your brain cheats. It offloads repeated behaviors into a separate system entirely. One that doesn't ask permission, doesn't wait for you to weigh pros and cons, and doesn't particularly care what you meant to do today. That system has a name. Deep in your brain, beneath the wrinkly outer layer where your thinking happens, sits a walnut-sized cluster of structures called the basal ganglia. Think of your brain as a company. The prefrontal cortex is the executive, slow, thoughtful, expensive to run. The basal ganglia is the automation department. Its entire job is to notice, hey, we've done this exact sequence a bunch of times. Let's put it on autopilot and free up the executive for something else. MIT neuroscientists actually watch this happen in real time. When rats learned to run a maze for a reward, their brain activity was chaotic. Every turn required full attention. But after enough repetitions, something remarkable happened. Brain activity spiked at the start of the maze, went nearly silent in the middle, then spiked again at the end. The middle part, the actual habit, required almost no conscious brain power at all. The behavior had been chunked into a single automatic unit and handed off to autopilot. That's not a metaphor. That's your neurons literally rewiring to make you more efficient and less in control. So, how does your brain decide what to automate? It follows a shockingly simple 3-step loop, one that shows up in literally every habit you have, good or bad. Cue, routine, reward. The cue is the trigger, a time of day, a location, an emotion, even just the sight of your phone. The routine is the behavior itself, the scrolling, the snacking, the nail biting, the just one more episode. The reward is what your brain gets out of it, a hit of dopamine, relief from boredom, a break from a feeling you didn't want to sit with. Here's the part that changes everything. Dopamine isn't released when you get the reward. It's released when you spot the cue. Your brain starts craving the routine the second it recognizes the trigger, long before any reward shows up. That's why you can feel the pull to check your phone before you've even decided to. The wanting comes first. The choosing, if it happens at all, comes after. This loop is so powerful that studies on habit formation, most famously popularized by journalist Charles Duhigg, found that almost none of your daily behavior is the result of active decision-making. Estimates suggest roughly 40 to 45% of everything you do each day is a habit, running on this exact loop, not a fresh choice. Nearly half of you is autopilot. If you want proof of how strong this loop is, look at one of the strangest natural experiments in habit research, American soldiers in Vietnam. By 1971, an estimated 15 to 20% of enlisted soldiers had become regular heroin users. Military officials were terrified. This looked like a permanent addiction crisis about to flood back into the United States. Public health experts predicted a wave of relapse and ruined lives. It never happened. Follow-up studies found that roughly 95% of those soldiers simply stopped using heroin once they came home. No rehab, no treatment program, many with barely any struggle at all. Why? Because the cue was gone. The jungle, the war, the constant fear, the specific friends they used with, the entire trigger environment vanished the second they landed back home. Without the cue, the loop had nothing to fire on. The craving that felt unbeatable in one context simply didn't follow them into a different one. It's one of the most convincing pieces of evidence that habits, even brutal ones, aren't really about the substance or the behavior itself. They're about the loop. Remove the trigger, and even something as powerful as addiction can lose its grip. This is why just use more willpower is such bad advice. It's not a discipline problem, it's an architecture problem. Willpower lives in the prefrontal cortex, the slow executive department. Habits live in the basal ganglia, the fast automation department. And here's the catch: the prefrontal cortex gets tired. The basal ganglia doesn't. Psychologists call this ego depletion, the idea that self-control is a limited resource that drains throughout the day. Resist a donut at 9 a.m., and you'll have slightly less willpower left to resist snapping at a coworker by 4 p.m. Meanwhile, your automatic habits are running exactly as strong as they were this morning, waiting for you to slip. It's not a fair fight. You're bringing a battery to fight a machine that never needs to recharge. This is also why habits are so brutally resistant to New Year's resolutions. You're not fighting laziness. You're fighting a neurological structure that evolved for millions of years to make behavior effortless. And it is very, very good at its job. Here's the twist. This isn't a design flaw. It's one of the smartest features your brain has. Imagine if every single action required full conscious deliberation. Walking, chewing, remembering how to get dressed. You'd be so cognitively exhausted by 10 a.m. that abstract thinking, planning, creativity, problem-solving would be nearly impossible. Automating the routine stuff is precisely what freed up your brain to do the things that make humans unusual. Art, language, mathematics, arguing about whether a hot dog is a sandwich. Habits aren't a bug in human cognition. They're the reason human cognition can afford to be as powerful as it is. The problem isn't that you have an autopilot. The problem is that modern life is very good at hijacking it. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every slot machine-style app design is engineered around one target: the cue routine reward loop. Tech companies didn't invent your basal ganglia. They just found the exposed wiring and plugged straight into it. A red notification badge is a cue. Opening the app is the routine. The unpredictable reward, sometimes something interesting, sometimes nothing, is the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. Variable rewards make the craving stronger, not weaker, because your brain can't predict exactly when the payoff is coming, so it keeps checking. You're not weak-willed. You're a very efficient animal, being farmed by systems that understand your own neuroscience better than you do. Here's the good news. Understanding the loop is also the blueprint for beating it. You almost never eliminate a habit outright. The neural pathway doesn't just disappear once it's built, but research shows you can do something nearly as powerful. Keep the cue, keep the reward, replace the routine. Same trigger, same craving. Different behavior in the middle that still satisfies it. Feel anxious, cue, to instead of biting your nails, old routine. To squeeze a stress ball, new routine. To get the same physical release, reward. This is why habit researchers say environment beats willpower almost every time. Change the cue, put your phone in another room, don't buy the snacks, and the whole loop never even starts. You're not fighting the automation department. You're just refusing to give it a trigger to automate around. And it works the other way too. You can build good habits the same way apps hook you on bad ones, by deliberately stacking a new routine onto a cue that already exists. Want to floss more? Don't rely on remembering. Attach it to something automatic you already do every night, like brushing your teeth. The old cue becomes a launch pad for the new behavior, and eventually, the basal ganglia stops asking questions and just runs it, the exact same way it automated everything else. So next time your hand reaches for your phone before you've decided to, or you wake up partway through a task you don't remember starting, don't panic. That's not a broken you. That's a highly optimized you. Running code that was written by repetition, not by choice. The unsettling part is that most of what you call your personality is really just the habits your brain decided were worth automating. The hopeful part? Code can be rewritten. You didn't choose most of what you do today, but you can choose what you do tomorrow. One cue, one loop, one repetition at a time. Subscribe for more of what's actually going on in your head. New video every week.